So enough about me. Anu, if you can just go ahead and share a little bit about your background and what initially inspired you to pursue your current path.
Okay, so I'm a third generation do-gooder. My grandfather and my father and my mom help people. When the British left India, India got divided into three different countries, and my grandfather came over as a refugee immigrant with nothing. My grandparents on my mom's side also left everything behind and came here with nothing, and they had to build up from scratch. And so, when they did build up, my dad's dad set up a trust so he could, every year he would marry off 500 women so that they didn't have to pay dowry. He set up a building for widows to be housed in, and he did a lot of good work. Now, my parents, before I could have my birthday party, I went to the home for the blind or somewhere else, and I fed the kids over there, and then I had my birthday party with my kids. And, my mom ran a restaurant. And when the food was left over, her chauffeur would sit at a street corner with all the food, and people would come and get the food from him so that they wouldn't be starving. So that's kind of the atmosphere I grew up in. So I grew up in India where there's a lot of poor people and there's a chain of giving. So you try to help whoever you can, whenever you can. At least that's how my family does it. And y- I've seen how little changes, acts of kindness make a huge difference in people's lives for generations to come. And so, with that background, I got married, I came to America. 2008, I got divorced. So I had a big house, 5 bedrooms, 3.5 bathrooms, and it went from having 6 people in it to having 3 people in it. I had an extra couple of bedrooms. And my son, when he was in third grade, there was this other boy, Paul Levine, who is the most empathetic boy I have ever come across in my life. And I asked his mom, what is it that, how come this kid is so nice? And she says, well, maybe it's because he shares his bathroom with strangers. And I'm like, huh? And she's like, well, we're part of this program. It's called Hospitality Homes. So we have an extra bedroom, and strangers from all over come and stay with us, and they do medical treatment. And then, the boys share the bathroom with them. So they get to meet them, know their stories. And, they'll be in the kitchen. We might be having breakfast together. I'm like, oh, that's huge. Strangers in your house. How's that worked out? She's like, never had a problem. I've been doing this for 5 years at that point, never had a problem. So when she told me about this, I didn't have any extra rooms or anything. But then I got divorced. And now I had a bunch of extra rooms. And I have two sons who were at that point, 14 and 17. And, they were lucky to have everything in life. And I'm like, how do I teach these kids like I was taught? And I'm like, I called up Mimi. I'm like, Mimi, is it still safe to host? And she's like, yeah, of course it is. And then I told my dad in India that I was going to be hosting strangers in my home. And he goes, no, you can't do that. No, it's not safe. Don't do that. I'm like, I'm just informing you guys. I'm not asking for permission. I'm going to be doing this because I want to do it. And then I called up the organization. And so what happens is someone from the organization comes over, they interview you, they take photos of the bedroom, and all you need to sign up to be a host for this organization is a bed and access to a bathroom. You don't have to provide anything else. Boston is the mecca for medical care. People come from all over. Boston also has hotels that go at an 85% occupancy rate. at a price of $250 to $450 a night. And health insurance will cover 80% of your medical stuff, but they will not cover transportation, food, or housing. So it adds up very quickly. Hospitality Homes, I call it a little David organization, is this tiny little nonprofit, which when I signed up, their operating budget was $300,000 a year. They had 4 staff members, and 95 cents of every dollar went towards the program. We were a group of 120 hosts, and we would host strangers in our home. So I started doing this, and it went very well. I had people from Mexico, from the Bahamas, from all parts of America, the nicest people you can imagine. I mean, there was a woman that stayed with me and she's like, your toilet wasn't working. So I went down to the hardware store and I replaced this. And I'm like, you know how to do that? Why didn't you just tell me? I'd call the plumber. She's like, no, you're looking after me. I'll look after you. I'm like, thank you. And then there was the Chinese family. The guy only spoke Mandarin, but he saw me mowing the lawn outside and he comes out in his flip-flops and he just gestures to me and he's like, I'll do this. And I'm like, okay, thank you. And so Hospitality Homes is a nonprofit in Boston. When patients and their families come from 50 miles away to Boston for medical treatment, we provide them with housing. And since the pandemic, besides host homes, we also have donated homes and subsidized Airbnbs and hotels that we provide. We have an amazing executive director who is also a host herself, Debbie Pepper. So she truly understands our guests. And she signed on in January of 2019, and then everything shut down. And we didn't know what was happening next. The Ronald McDonald House, which again, you can only stay in if your child has cancer, shut down. The Hope Lodge shut down. The only place that stayed open throughout the pandemic and didn't turn anyone away was Hospitality Homes. We went from 120 hosts to 5 hosts. But the board members worked with the office staff. We released $120,000 and I shouldn't say we, Debbie. Debbie signed contracts with hotels and Airbnb people to get subsidized housing so that every guest who came, now the guests also went down, right? Because of COVID, people who absolutely had life-threatening issues and needed to have it worked on traveled. And they actually had to show up 2 weeks before to quarantine and then go in and then stay 2 weeks after. So the stays became longer, but the number of days used was longer, but the number of people went down. But Debbie kept the organization going. And now I think this is year 3 or year 4 for her. The operating budget has doubled. The office staff has doubled. The number of people that are coming and staying with us has more than doubled. And it's doing really well. And while I had that big house and I was hosting, I knew that at some point the kids would go off to college and I wouldn't have that big house anymore. So I started hosting in, I think, around 2010. And I sold the house 7 years ago. And 6 months after I moved into a condo, I was like, I have to host. I cannot do this. I cannot stop cold. And I missed it. I missed the people who came and the kids I met. Like, one of the highlights for me during the pandemic was just like you. There was a family who came with a baby in the NICU, And then they brought the baby home. And, I got my mask on. I let them into the house. I wave hi at them. I'm keeping my distance. And then the parents asked me, "Would you like to hold Jack?" And I'm like, "Damn, yes, I would love to hold Jack.